Everyone froze. Nobody could believe what had just happened. Not in broad daylight, not in the middle of the company's annual gala. The ballroom of the Lexington Hotel in Chicago was alive with chandeliers glinting, glasses clinking, and executives laughing. At the center of it all stood Robert Caldwell, the man the press had once called the golden heir of America's finance empire. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, exuding calm authority, with eyes that missed nothing. But what no one knew was that Robert had just executed a move that could bankrupt the entire Caldwell Group Trust Fund. Over $100 million vanished from company accounts while everyone clinked glasses obliviously. And then she walked in. Elena Ramirez, the new compliance officer, sharp-eyed, fierce, and unwilling to let injustice slide. She had only joined the company 3 months ago, but had an instinct for spotting fraud that even senior auditors overlooked. Elena noticed the unusual transfer immediately. The numbers, the routing, the timing. It didn't take her long to connect the dots. But he had no idea she was watching. The guests continued to toast, laughing about market successes and rumored mergers. Robert smiled, shaking hands, unaware that Elena was already calculating every possible way to stop him. She felt the weight of her responsibility pressing against her chest. If she acted, she'd face a billionaire's wrath. If she didn't, $100 million would disappear forever and countless employees would suffer. Her mind raced. Every scenario was dangerous. Robert was not just rich. He was untouchable, backed by lawyers who could intimidate anyone. Yet, Elena had something they didn't: moral certainty and courage. And she knew the first step was exposing the theft without tipping him off. Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly while smiling in their face? Elena thought, as she stared at Robert's confident silhouette. The clock ticked down. In the next 24 hours, the company's board would meet, and if Robert wasn't stopped, the transfer would be irreversible. But Elena wasn't just thinking about money. She was thinking about justice, and about standing up when no one else could. If you believe in justice, pay attention now. What happens next will shock everyone. No one saw it coming. Not the board, not the lawyers, not even Robert himself. The next morning, Elena Ramirez arrived at Caldwell Group headquarters in downtown Chicago, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The lobby was buzzing with executives, but she moved with precision. Today wasn't just another day. Today, she had to confront the billionaire and make sure the $100 million didn't vanish into thin air. Robert Caldwell was already in the boardroom, sipping his espresso, perfectly composed. His tailored suit and confident posture made him look untouchable. But Elena had done her homework. She had printed every suspicious transaction, memorized the routing numbers, and even prepared a subtle, untraceable alert for the auditors. She wasn't going in blind. But he had no idea that the woman in the doorway was about to corner him. The boardroom door opened, and Elena stepped inside. All eyes turned to her. She wasn't supposed to be there this early. Some executives raised eyebrows, whispers flitting across the polished room. But Elena didn't flinch. She placed the documents on the long oak table with deliberate calm. "These transfers," she began, her voice steady but commanding, "were unauthorized. I believe they originated from within this room." Gasps. Murmurs. The board members exchanged glances, while Robert leaned back, a faint smile teasing the corner of his lips. He didn't deny it. Instead, he studied her, as if amused by her audacity. "Elena, I appreciate your enthusiasm," he said smoothly. "But you must understand, not every financial move is as it seems." But Elena wasn't intimidated. She had anticipated this exact response. "I've double-checked every ledger, every account, every signature," she said, locking eyes with him. "This transfer is illegal. And if it goes through, it will destroy this company's credibility." Robert's smile faded. Something in her tone, the unwavering certainty, made him pause. No one had ever challenged him so openly, and certainly not with evidence so precise. Elena could feel the shift in the room. Even David Chun, the CFO, was now visibly uneasy. "This is where the story changes," the narrator would say, "because courage has a way of exposing even the most meticulously hidden lies." Elena continued, "We don't have much time. I've set up a secure freeze on the accounts. If anyone tries to override it, the authorities will be notified immediately." The room went silent. Robert's mind raced. He had planned to siphon the money today, quietly, under the guise of routine transfers. But Elena had intercepted him, and now, with the board silently observing, he had no easy escape. Because what happens in the next few minutes will decide the fate of $100 million and the integrity of a billion-dollar empire. No one imagined the calmest man in Chicago could lose his composure in front of an entire boardroom until today. The boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. Robert Caldwell, usually untouchable, now felt the heat of scrutiny. Elena Ramirez had cornered him, not with threats or gossip, but with cold, unassailable facts. Every executive in the room could sense the storm about to break. He had no idea that this young compliance officer was about to change everything. Elena stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She placed a single sheet of paper in front of Robert. It wasn't a ledger or a report. It was a timeline of the transfers, each with highlighted discrepancies. She spoke with precision, each word slicing through the tension. "Robert," she said calmly, "I know what you did. This transfer isn't authorized. You don't have the company's consent. And if you continue, it will be considered embezzlement." The room held its breath. Robert's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his espresso. For the first time, he looked unsure. His usual charm was gone, replaced by a flicker of panic. "Elena," he said, voice low, attempting control, "you're making a serious accusation. Do you understand the consequences of this?" Elena's eyes locked with his. She wasn't afraid of the billionaire. "I understand the consequences of doing nothing. This company, these employees, they are more important than your fortune. And I won't let you destroy what so many people worked for." The board leaned in, captivated. Victoria Lee's sharp gaze softened just slightly. She had expected posturing, not moral courage. David Chen exhaled slowly, realizing that Elena was their last line of defense. "Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly, while everyone else clapped and cheered?" The narrator's voice echoed. This was that moment. Robert's mind raced. He had underestimated her. Every scenario he had planned relied on silence, obedience, and fear. Elena had none of those. He looked around the boardroom, realizing for the first time that no one would cover for him this time. His empire, built on influence and intimidation, felt suddenly fragile. Elena continued, "I've already frozen the accounts temporarily. The authorities will be notified if any attempt is made to bypass the system. You have a choice. Reverse the transaction voluntarily or face full legal consequences." Robert's jaw tightened. For a fleeting moment, the billionaire who had stolen $100 million felt the weight of the law, and the weight of someone who refused to be intimidated. No one suspected the quiet woman in accounting could outsmart a billionaire, but today she did. After the boardroom confrontation, Elena didn't relax. She knew Robert Caldwell was clever, ruthless, and experienced at bending rules to his favor. The temporary freeze on the $100 million transfer was only a delay. He would find a way to bypass it if she didn't act fast. Elena returned to her office, a sleek space overlooking Chicago's Loop, her laptop open and lights dimmed. Every click, every keystroke was calculated. She traced Robert's digital fingerprints through layers of corporate networks, finding patterns he thought were invisible. He had no idea she was turning the tools of his empire against him. Meanwhile, Robert sat in his high-rise office, staring at the frozen accounts. His face, usually calm and controlled, betrayed frustration. He had underestimated her audacity and precision. Every legal loophole he had counted on was now blocked. His empire's facade felt thinner by the second. Elena discovered something chilling. Robert wasn't acting alone. A small group of trusted executives were subtly manipulating numbers to assist his schemes. But she also found their weakness, fear. Once confronted, even these loyalists might crack. Have you ever seen someone unravel the threads of deception while the deceiver is still smiling? Elena formulated a plan. She would expose the transfer publicly, using a secure internal communication that automatically reached every board member, the CFO, and the compliance team. No one could ignore it. But she needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable, and time-stamped. Late into the night, she worked in silence, her office lit only by the glow of her monitor. Every screenshot, every line of code, every ledger discrepancy was cataloged. It was meticulous. It was surgical. And it would leave Robert Caldwell exposed, not just to the company, but to the world. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from David Chen. "Be careful. He's not someone you can intimidate. If this leaks, he'll fight back." Elena smiled faintly. That was exactly why she couldn't back down. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not when $100 million and the company's reputation were at stake. No one expected the calm, collected billionaire to lash out, but today his empire fought back. By morning, the news of the frozen $100 million transfer had spread internally. Robert Caldwell, furious and cornered, was already plotting his counterstrike. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was a master manipulator. And manipulators didn't lose without a fight. Elena walked into the office, coffee in hand, feeling the subtle tension crackle around her. The entire company seemed to sense that the storm had begun. She had prepared for scrutiny, for whispers, for indirect attacks. But she wasn't prepared for the scale of Robert's plan. He had no idea that the woman standing across from him was about to turn his attack into his downfall. Emails were circulating, subtly undermining Elena's credibility. Rumors whispered through meetings, questioning her decisions, her loyalty, her competence. But Elena stayed calm, focusing on the evidence, the facts, the undeniable trail of Robert's financial manipulations. She knew that fear was Robert's weapon, but truth was hers. Robert stepped into the office later that day, exuding the charm that had manipulated so many before. "Elena," he said, voice smooth, "I admire your persistence. But don't forget who controls this company." Elena didn't flinch. "And don't forget, Robert, who controls the evidence," she replied, holding her tablet up so that the timestamped transactions glowed clearly on the screen. "This isn't about control. It's about accountability." Board members started to take notice. David Chun exchanged a meaningful glance with Elena, quietly supporting her stance. Robert's calm demeanor faltered slightly. The room could sense it. Every calculated threat, every subtle attempt to intimidate Elena, was neutralized by facts and her unwavering confidence. "Have you ever watched a powerful man crumble under the weight of his own deception?" the narrator mused. This was that moment. Elena's boldness inspired others in the company to speak up. Whispers became conversations, and conversations became confessions. Executives who had assisted Robert began to back away, afraid of being implicated. The billionaire, who once seemed untouchable, was now isolated. And then came the unexpected. Robert tried one last tactic, a direct public attack. A press release was drafted to discredit Elena, painting her as overreaching and reckless. But Elena had anticipated this. She had already leaked the incontrovertible evidence to the board and legal authorities, ensuring that any attempt to defame her would only expose Robert further. No one could have predicted that the man who controlled millions could be undone by one determined woman. But it was happening. By midday, the atmosphere at Caldwell Group headquarters had shifted. Rumors of Elena's confrontation with Robert and the frozen $100 million had spread like wildfire. Executives whispered in corners, their loyalties quietly realigning. The once feared billionaire was no longer untouchable. Cracks had begun to form in his carefully constructed empire. He had no idea that the tide was turning against him. Robert paced in his high-rise office, the Chicago skyline glinting coldly through the windows. Every attempt to manipulate board members, every veiled threat had failed. The very people he had relied upon to protect him were now questioning his motives. He felt the first sting of panic, the fear of losing everything he had built, not just the $100 million, but reputation, influence, and control. Elena, meanwhile, worked relentlessly. She compiled every document, every audit trail, every time-stamped transaction that proved Robert's illegal maneuvers. Her phone rang constantly, David Chun providing updates, board members confirming their support, lawyers preparing legal measures. She had created an unbreakable fortress of truth. Have you ever seen a power shift in silence, like a storm gathering without warning? Then came the first public tremor. A trusted executive who had been assisting Robert leaked information to the board, fearing complicity in the theft. The revelation was damning. Robert had orchestrated a complex series of unauthorized transfers, hoping no one would notice until it was too late. The evidence was now undeniable. The board called an emergency meeting. Robert entered, trying to project authority, but it was gone, replaced by unease. Elena presented the case with calm precision. Every ledger discrepancy, every forged signature, every illicit transfer was displayed. The room was silent except for the soft clicks of her tablet and the collective intake of breath. This was the moment the billionaire realized he had underestimated her, and the consequences would be immediate. Victoria Lee, the skeptical board member, stood to speak. It's clear that these transfers were unauthorized. The evidence is irrefutable. The board has no choice but to act. David Chin added. and the accounts will remain frozen until regulatory authorities can intervene. Robert's face was drained of color. He realized that not only had Elena blocked his plans, but she had also secured allies and built a case so airtight that escape was impossible. For the first time in decades, a billionaire who had never faced consequences felt the weight of accountability pressing down. No one expected a billionaire to crumble in silence, but the world was about to watch it happen in real time. Robert Caldwell, cornered and desperate, refused to accept defeat. From his high-rise office in downtown Chicago, he began orchestrating a series of aggressive maneuvers, threatening resignations, attempting to sway board members with promises of bonuses, even leaking misleading reports to the press. He wanted to regain control, to reclaim the $100 million, and to humiliate Elena publicly. He had no idea that the woman who had blocked him was already 3 steps ahead. Elena, calm and focused, anticipated each move. She had prepared a full dossier, proof of the unauthorized transfers, email chains, time-stamped ledger manipulations, and even video evidence of Robert instructing executives to cover the trail. It was irrefutable. The board convened an emergency meeting, and Elena, standing at the head of the room, addressed everyone. These transfers are illegal, and any attempt to override the freeze will be reported to authorities immediately. This is not a choice, it is the law. At first, Robert tried to speak, to charm and intimidate, but his words fell flat. Every board member had already reviewed Elena's evidence. Whispers turned into murmurs and murmurs into open confrontation. Executives who had once silently obeyed Robert now began questioning him aloud. Have you ever seen a powerful man unravel in front of everyone who once feared him? This was that moment. Elena took it further. Using secure communication channels, she ensured that regulatory authorities and company auditors were watching in real time. Every action Robert attempted was immediately recorded and documented. His threats, his manipulations, his panic, all of it would be part of the permanent record. And then came the shock. The press, tipped off by a secure leak from an anonymous board member, began reporting live on the scandal. The billionaire who once ruled with charm and intimidation was now facing a public scandal. Headlines would read, Caldwell Group's billionaire heir faces $100 million embezzlement investigation. Robert's face, usually impenetrable, reflected panic and disbelief. For the first time, he realized that wealth could not shield him from accountability. Elena, composed and resolute, watched as his carefully constructed empire began to fracture. No one expected a man with billions to crumble under pressure, but desperation changes even the strongest. Robert Caldwell sat alone in his high-rise office, the Chicago skyline a cold reflection of his unraveling empire. His empire of charm, intimidation, and manipulation was collapsing, and the $100 million transfer that he had so carefully orchestrated was frozen, exposed, and under investigation. Panic, a feeling unfamiliar to him, gnawed at every calculated thought. He had no idea that Elena's plan had already anticipated every move he could make. In a desperate attempt to regain control, Robert began pulling strings in secret. He contacted loyal executives one by one, offering bribes, threatening careers, and attempting to manipulate contracts behind closed doors. But Elena had already set traps, silent alerts that would immediately notify the board and authorities if anyone tried to override her freezes. Each move he made was turning into proof against him. Elena, meanwhile, remained composed, coordinating with legal counsel and regulatory authorities. She knew that Robert's desperation was his weakness. His ego made him reckless, and his arrogance ensured that every attempt to manipulate the system would leave a trace. Have you ever watched someone's power slip through their fingers like sand? This was that moment. The board called yet another emergency meeting. This time, Robert attempted a public display of dominance, standing at the front of the room, voice booming. I built this company. I deserve respect. You will all regret questioning me. But Elena didn't flinch. She held up her tablet, each screen glowing with irrefutable evidence of his embezzlement, forged transactions, and attempts to manipulate employees. Every lie he told, every threat he made had already been documented. The board members, previously intimidated by his presence, now looked at him with cold clarity. Victoria Lee, standing firmly, addressed the room. Robert Caldwell, your actions are illegal and unacceptable. The board has voted to suspend all your executive privileges pending regulatory investigation. Robert's face was drained of color. Every threat, every attempt to reclaim power, had only accelerated his downfall. His empire, built over decades, now hung by a thread because one woman refused to bow to fear or greed. "If you believe in justice, stay with us," the narrator whispered. Because sometimes courage doesn't just stop a crime, it destroys the illusion of invincibility. The final blow came when regulatory authorities arrived at Caldwell Group, reviewing evidence Elena had meticulously organized. Robert's once impenetrable shield of wealth and influence offered no protection. The billionaire who had stolen $100 million was now facing the full weight of justice: public scrutiny, legal consequences, and irreversible personal shame. No one could have predicted that a billionaire would be stripped bare in court, but today, the truth came roaring out. The courtroom was packed, sunlight slicing through tall windows in downtown Chicago, casting dramatic shadows across the marble floor. Cameras flashed as the media crowded the gallery. Robert Caldwell, once untouchable, now sat on the defendant's bench, suit immaculate but eyes betraying fear and disbelief. He had no idea that Elena Ramirez had built a case so airtight it would leave him exposed for the world to see. Elena walked in confidently, the same calm determination that had dominated boardrooms now radiating in the courtroom. Her evidence was overwhelming: documents, timestamps, emails, internal videos, and corroborating testimony from board members and executives who had finally chosen truth over loyalty to a billionaire. Every lie Robert had woven was systematically unraveled. "Have you ever seen someone's entire world collapse while everyone watches?" the narrator whispered. This was that moment. The trial moved swiftly. Legal experts presented the evidence, highlighting Robert's manipulations and unauthorized transfers. Executives testified about his secret instructions to manipulate company funds. The media coverage amplified every moment, making it impossible for Robert to hide behind wealth, charm, or influence. David Chun, quietly observing, felt a mixture of relief and vindication. He had supported Elena from the start, ensuring the board acted decisively. Victoria Lee's pointed questions in court exposed gaps in Robert's defense, further weakening his position. The most shocking moment came when one of Robert's closest allies confessed. They had been coerced into assisting him, but after witnessing Elena's precision and courage, they turned whistleblower. Their testimony revealed not only the $100 million embezzlement, but also other hidden manipulations within the company. Robert's face drained of all color. For the first time, he experienced the vulnerability of public shame. The billionaire who had stolen millions and manipulated an entire empire was now at the mercy of the law, and of Elena, the woman who refused to be intimidated. "If you believe in justice, stay awake," the narrator continued. Because courage doesn't just confront corruption, it dismantles it entirely. The verdict was swift. Robert Caldwell was found guilty on multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. His financial privileges frozen, public reputation destroyed, and legal penalties looming. The man who had once ruled over millions now faced consequences that no wealth could mitigate. Elena, resolute and composed, left the courtroom amid a flurry of reporters. She had not only protected the company and employees, but had exposed the dangerous arrogance of a billionaire. Her courage inspired countless others, a reminder that one determined person could challenge even the most powerful. No one expected the world's richest man to fall, but the moment justice prevailed, everything changed forever. Weeks after the courtroom verdict, Caldwell Group headquarters was quiet, yet charged with a sense of renewal. The $100 million was secured, frozen, and redirected under strict oversight. Robert Caldwell, once untouchable, was now publicly disgraced, his influence shattered, and legal penalties pending. He had no idea that one woman's courage could topple a billionaire empire and inspire everyone around her. Elena Ramirez walked through the halls with quiet confidence. Employees whispered words of admiration and gratitude. David Chun approached, offering a subtle nod of respect. Victoria Lee, standing tall, shook Elena's hand firmly. The company had survived the storm, and more importantly, integrity had won over greed. Have you ever seen someone stand so firmly that the world bends to their courage? This was that moment. Robert Caldwell, meanwhile, faced his reality. No wealth could hide the shame of public exposure, nor could it erase the mistakes he had made. His attempts at manipulation, bribery, and intimidation had been thoroughly documented and were now part of an unassailable legal record. Friends and allies abandoned him. The billionaire who had once commanded fear now commanded only pity and scorn. Elena's victory wasn't just about stopping a theft. It was about sending a message. No matter how powerful someone appears, accountability and courage can triumph. The company thrived under renewed transparency, with employees feeling empowered and protected. If you believe in justice, take note, the narrator continued. Because courage isn't just about confronting evil. It's about reclaiming the world for everyone who deserves fairness. As the sun set over Chicago, Elena looked out from her office, reflecting on the storm she had weathered. She hadn't sought fame or reward. Her goal was simple: to do what was right. And in doing so, she had rewritten the rules of power, proving that even a single person could confront a billionaire and win.